At the 2025 National Holstein Convention in St. Louis, I had the opportunity to catch up with sixth-generation Minnesota dairy farmer and veterinarian, Dr. Ashley Swenson. As a vet specializing in embryo transfer, Ashley owns Midwest Embryo Transfer Service and also has a seat on the Holstein Association's International Marketing Committee. This conversation includes her tips for making genetic investment decisions, and we go beyond repro technology to talk about a topic near and dear to her heart, family farm transition, and what it took for Ashley and her husband to make her home farm an opportunity for the seventh generation. All this today on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset, so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. This episode is brought to you by Zoetis. As the world's leading animal health company, Zoetis is dedicated to helping producers achieve healthy animals, healthy dairies, and healthy food through their world-class portfolio. For more information, visit dairywellness.com. Ashley Swenson, we're here at National Holstein Convention. And first of all, you're a delegate here this year.
Yes, this is one of several opportunities that I've had to serve as a delegate. And so it's really humbling when the people of your state, the people that helped raise you, feel that you should be in a position to help represent them. And so I think it's a really unique opportunity. So finding a way to embrace that and give back to those breeders and represent them accordingly, hear their problems, present solutions, I think is a really important and unique position to be in.
So you're representing breeders from the state of Minnesota, but you are also one yourself. In fact, sixth-generation dairy farmer?
Correct. Yes, the sixth generation on my family's farm. We actually are living at the original homesteaded site. So we grow along with the Holstein Association. So we still have cattle from lines from 1885, and we welcomed the seventh generation in September of 2024. And so it's been fun to be part of that legacy.
Yeah. So and when you say seventh generation, is that your generation that is coming into the fold?
Yes. So my little 9-month-old now, it will be the seventh generation. And so it's really fun to see him interact with my parents and grandparents. And so it's been a blast.
So seventh generation is now part of the family farming business. So there's the dairy farm, but then that's not the only thing that you do,
right? So outside of that, I am a veterinarian. I practice embryo transfer exclusively, and that's in beef and dairy cattle. So my practice is about half beef, half dairy, and that's really where my current passion lies and contribution back to our farm as well.
That's an interesting combination of roles. You're both dairy farmer and also practicing veterinarian in the advanced reproduction space. What was the path like that brought you into both of those roles?
Yeah. So growing up on the dairy farm, we were heavily involved in the registered cattle business. So I mentioned in 1885, it would have been my great-great-great-grandfather had heard about these registered Holsteins in Iowa. He had heard that they had higher production levels, more reliable breeding pedigrees. And so he drove down to Iowa and bought 2 cows and 1 bull. And from what we calculated, he spent the farm's annual income, to buy these 3 animals. And so uniquely, those lines still follow through to some of the animals we still have on our farm today.
No way.
Yeah, so that's really cool to have both the family generationally involved yet, but then also the cattle generationally have stuck around as well. So it's being at Holstein Convention, it's a testament to what the association provides and that reliability and consistency. And the registered cattle is really how I got involved in the embryo transfer side of things. So our family was flushing cows, doing embryo transfer work. We had some bulls and stud, different advanced reproductive technologies that we implemented on our own farm. And so when I went to vet school, I decided I'm 5'3", and so there's a limitation to physically and how long can I be a veterinarian and pulling calves and fixing DAs and still have a back in 30 years. And so I decided to go down the path of the embryo work and decide, is that something that I'm interested in? Is something I'm even good at? So I reached out to our local embryo transfer practitioner that I grew up watching, and that's kind of where it all developed. I called him up one day and said, hey, have you ever considered selling your veterinary practice? And he said, let me park my van and let's talk about it. So it's been a journey, but it's been a really rewarding one. I've been able to meet so many wonderful people and old acquaintances, new acquaintances. It's been really fun.
That's incredible. So you saw that opportunity, you made a phone call, and here you are.
Right.
Wow. Which is so funny to me when you think about the history of your dairy that you shared and your great grandfather literally betting the farm on these 3 Holsteins, and the risk and the foresight and that vision for the future that he saw. But in many ways, you parallel that with your own story.
Yes, absolutely.
Give just a quick little snapshot description of both the farm and then also the practice.
Yeah. So our farm has 4 Lely robots. They've been in for about 13 years now. We maximize the efficiency through them. So we try to run about 270 plus animals through those 4 robots. So we're really pushing the envelope on our robots' capacity. We also raise our own heifers. Breeding age go to a raiser for a short period of time. We bring them back, calve them in ourselves. And then as far as my veterinary practice, it's myself and a technician. So the 2 of us, dynamic duo, we travel Minnesota and Wisconsin. We joke if we can get there on 4 wheels during a day's time, we will be there. And so the embryo side of things, we are involved in the conventional and traditional on-farm flushing. That's the majority of our work. We, 1 day a week, will perform IVF sessions or OPUs, where we'll retrieve the unfertilized eggs from farms and send those down to Transova for fertilization. We do embryo transfers, both fresh. We thaw embryos, we freeze embryos, we export them to multiple countries. So we do everything except the fertilization part at the IVF lab.
Ashley, you mentioned the work that you do with embryo transfer and how that is part of the ability to export and market. And now you have taken your expertise in this field and actually brought it to the benefit of U.S. dairy producers through the Holstein Association, because you're part of a committee that focuses on these conversations, correct?
So I serve on the Holstein Association's International Marketing Committee. And so we met about a month ago, and we're really working on developing new goals for the funds that are allocated for this committee and developing new markets for Holstein genetics. So that means a number of things. And I think one of my goals is to bring together other organizations to help implement opening those new markets. Off screen, we talked a little bit about the number of layers there are to opening a new market. So it's not just that somebody's interested in Africa to come in and buy embryos. You not only have to have people interested in genetics, you have to have them interested in your genetics. So the Holstein, and what does that mean for our association? And who needs to be at the table to help represent that? There's the next layer of who can actually take care of these genetics, the husbandry aspect. Do we, outside of genetics, do we bring in other producers or industry leaders, veterinarians who can teach the people in those regions how to care for those animals to optimize on those genetics, and even implanting embryos if it's the embryos that are imported. And then the next layer on top of that is we're developing those husbandry practices, those skill sets, but now we have the government layer of how do we incite trade and have all of the biosecurity measures in place? How do we negotiate what one country wants versus the other country and have those seamlessly occur so that things aren't stuck in customs at whatever port for whatever country? So combining all of those groups is something that I find rewarding and a challenge, but yeah, something that I feel like I've been able to bring to the table as well with the International Marketing Committee.
So as you explain that, Ashley, when we talk about exporting embryos and opportunities for U.S. dairy producers, it is not a simple linear process, is what I'm hearing from you.
Right.
In fact, it doesn't end with the embryo leaving the United States, you're talking about this whole process for making sure that these embryos can get to the destination, but then that there's a support system and infrastructure to take them all the way to fruition, implemented in those operations and in foreign countries, and also the development that needs to happen to make their goals come true and their goals reality and part of their own systems for food production and maybe even down the road for their own genetic population as well.
That's right.
What have been your biggest takeaways from being on that committee?
Oh man, I would say that we're still kind of in our goal building process right now. So I'd say it's a little early for me to say exactly what I've learned, but I'd say there's a lot of overlap between all of the industries I'm involved in, between the American Embryo Transfer Association, being a breeder, being involved in Holstein, and in the veterinary community. So there's a lot of overlap. So I think that's the one piece that I've learned is we all have very similar goals. It's combining those all and getting us on a straight trajectory to use the funding that we receive efficiently and effectively.
So that's part of the first steps right now is just getting on the same page to move forward and be able to take advantage of those opportunities as they arise, as they're available. And then the next steps, as you talked about, of implementation in those countries. What an exciting thing to be a part of. And when you think about, though, you're a forward thinker, as we've already picked up on in this conversation. What do you see for the U.S. dairy producer when you look at the opportunities that are out there? What's the potential for this to be a profit center, for this to be an additional revenue stream for U.S. producers?
Yeah. So I think even outside of the international profit centers, there's a lot of domestic opportunity and advancements that we've made using Holstein genetics combined with reproductive technologies. So I think the two have really changed our set base level and our ability to make genetic progress. And genetic progress means, like you said, feeding the world. So our ability to make more food more efficiently is enormous as we see the domestic cow herd for the beef population decline. We are still able to meet our beef production needs and same thing in the dairy industry. Fewer cows every year, but more pounds of milk produced. And that's a pretty incredible feat, especially in the face of the consumer telling us that we are the cause of global warming, when in reality, we are fighting it day by day with every breeding decision we make and really implementing those sustainable practices. So I think domestically, as we've moved the pendulum genetically for reproductive efficiency, we in the dairy industry are able to make more pounds of beef, make more replacement heifers, and have more saleable products off the farm. Because instead of, if you have 100 animals, if you improve your reproductive efficiency and have 5 extra animals every year, that's 5 more animals that are making you money, whether that's a beef animal, whether that's a dairy animal. Those genetic improvements that we make impact our bottom line with the saleable products that we have. And that's not always just beef or milk. It could be animals, live animals too.
So you've been touching on advanced reproduction for that repro efficiency, more animals being added to the herd, but you also just mentioned the genetic advancement. Can you speak a little bit to genomics and how you have seen that come into play in tandem with advanced reproduction practices?
Yeah. So genomics is really, ironically, helped with the implementation and continued success of advanced reproductive technologies. When I first started, which has been 9 years ago when I first bought my practice, I was told, why are you doing that? Embryo transfer won't exist 10 years from now.
Really?
And I chuckled a little bit because being a breeder, I understood the trajectory that genomics was taking us on, where breeders, even if they don't utilize genomics, where advanced reproductive technologies were going. And so with added data and information that we can glean from Holstein Association, it's really advanced our uses or increased the volume of use of those technologies. So genomics paired with the data that we get from Holstein Association, from all the data recording agencies, it really helps us define which animals should we be applying these technologies to, because not every animal is a great candidate to be a donor? And I think that's probably the number one question I get is, should I be doing IVF or conventional embryo transfer from fur? What does that look like?
Ooh, okay. So let's go there. And I want to take a swing at this, Ashley, from this bigger picture of even just thinking about where you and I are at right now. National Holstein Convention. I just walked out of the Junior Awards banquet. So I've been surrounded all week by these incredible youth that are the next generation of the business. You've been a delegate. You've been shoulder to shoulder all week with others who are like you, dairy producers. And so in this environment we're in, this is a really important conversation. But as you said, it's a very common question that you get. So can you walk through kind of a step-by-step evaluation of should you make those investments in embryo work and some of those repro technologies? And I think the most common question you said starts with,
Yeah, should I be flushing this cow?
yeah, okay. So give us the rubric for making some of these decisions. How are
Yeah.
you guiding your clients?
So I think you hit the nail on the head when you said investment. These technologies are definitely an investment. Just like when AI started gaining popularity in farms, the bulls that you were selecting and the price you were willing to pay for those different bulls all started coming into your decision-making process. Am I willing to invest X amount of dollars to get this end result within my own herd? And the same thing is true for donors and their offspring. So any one animal that we look at, it really starts with, if I flush this cow, what am I going to do with the offspring or embryos that I procure from those procedures? And so if we can't say, yes, I have this market, or I have buyer interest already, or I really want to use her to bring up my baseline in my farm, if you can't answer yes to any of those questions, that's probably not the animal we should start with in this investment journey. So really there has to be an end goal, whether that be improving baseline or saleable product of embryos or live animals from them.
So that's kind of that evaluation number one is, like you said, looking for the opportunity to build within your own herd or market, outside of your own herd.
Market is not a singular item either. There are so many markets. I mean, we talked about the export side of things, but domestically, there's so many different indices that people follow. Everybody has different breeding goals, which is what makes for lively discussions in any of these meetings and any interaction. So depending on what your genetics are in your farm, you may have something that somebody else wants and your breeding focus might be unique. And so it might not just be because you have the highest GTI animal in the country. You might have a different trait or traits that you're focusing on that provide a market for you. So when people ask me, well, what genetics do I have that will make this marketable? I can't answer that for any one individual. That's where things like National Holstein Convention and being shoulder to shoulder with all these different people provide opportunities for adults and youth to say, hey, can you help me understand what I have? How do I market this? Where do I go from here? So those markets really are endless, and you can take any animal and create your own market too. So I think that's a pretty amazing thing. We have all this information to do so much with.
So you can get really creative, but also it's looking at what would someone else find valuable and how can you make what you have available for that? So how about selecting young donor animals? I'm thinking of some of the folks we've been alongside at convention all week here that maybe have that young animal and are looking at doing some work with her. Selection criteria. What do you look for?
Yeah. So my selection criteria on what makes a good donor is totally different than what your end marketability is. When I think about donor selection, I'm thinking of things like, what is the health of that animal? Has she met different growth benchmarks? Is she developing appropriately for her age? Did we just bring her back from a show where it was 90 degrees all week that she has some sort of major stress that's going to impact her ability to perform as a donor? So when I select a donor, I really want to make sure that she's healthy, she's well grown, she hasn't incurred any major stressors that are going to basically inhibit your ability to effectively capitalize on your investment. I don't want you to come to me with an animal that I know is going to fail. we need to succeed together if we're going to have longevity in all of our businesses. And so my job in selecting donors is to make sure they are healthy, appropriate candidates to be enrolled in these programs.
So you are wanting to set the entire program up for success. And this is beyond the genetic merit. This is looking at the health and the timing and how can we optimize that for the best results.
Exactly.
So when it comes to looking at budgeting, how do you walk people through that?
Yeah. So we've got some pretty good benchmarks for a conventional flush versus IVF. The rule of thumb is that, or thing that to keep in mind is, you are paying a laboratory for IVF procedures to do what the cow can do for you. The rule of thumb is that an IVF procedure is going to be about double what you pay in a conventional flush for your cow. And so for a conventional flush, I tell people to budget $1,000 to $2,000 for an average day of 4 to 5 embryos. And for an IVF, to budget $2,000 to $3,000 to be safe. And worst case scenario, if you ask anybody who's been in the flushing business a really long time, the law of averages is the law of averages. So you can have zeros and you can have 10 plus double-digit days. But in general, we like to err on the side of caution. And so those budgeting numbers, is it worth the opportunity to have one calf at $1,000 if you do a conventional flush? Is it worth $3,000 and only get one calf if you do an IVF, based on various factors that are completely out of our control because of recipients or weather or fertility challenges, whatever the case may be. So we go into it conservatively, but we still have the optimism to hopefully we have success.
So, Ashley, what I appreciate and admire about you and the way that you walk through these different scenarios, and I'm sure what you're sharing with me is what you share with the clients you work with as well, is that you are being transparent, but also setting them up for success in the best ways that you can. And that doesn't just mean picking the right animal, doing the right things at the right time, but also having the bigger picture of how to make this a decision that is worthwhile, or be able to understand if is this in budget, is this out of budget, what's the bigger picture and the marketability, and bringing that all into the selection criteria from the very beginning, as far as how you do help your clients or advice you might give to others to set themselves up for success when it comes to any sort of advanced repro strategy.
Yeah. So I would say we have all these different tools at our fingertips and utilize them. We have all sorts of experts. Utilize them. So any animal that you have that might have pedigree potential, well, why don't we use a tool like genomics to give us more insight and improve the reliability of that information? Maybe if we're not sure genomically if she's going to be able to stand on that alone, but phenotypically she looks really good, maybe you can tap into a mentor and say, do you think this animal has the pedigree that we can potentially work her? This is where her genomics are at. Which path should we go down? Maybe it's an animal that she needs to develop an udder and some more show credentials for what her future in the embryo business looks like, if at all. Utilizing those tools. And I think using mentors as well. You have all of the leaders in the Holstein industry at your disposal at National Holstein Convention. And tapping into those people, asking them to help guide you and how they utilize these tools is really important. So utilizing each program as well is something we didn't necessarily delve into, but I get a lot of questions about, should I use a stimulation protocol or do a non-stimulation protocol for IVF? And we can do any and all of those things. What's going to be the most cost-effective for that animal? Are we going to enroll her in an IVF program and we're going to run her at least 3 times? Well, maybe the first 2 times we are interested in a non-stimulation protocol to see what her population looks like on her ovaries as far as what her future success as a donor is going to look like. Maybe we say, no, we just want to run her once, so we want to optimize our results. So putting her on a stimulation protocol is the most optimal thing to do for the singular time that we are going to be working on her. there's never one program or one answer that ever fits every animal for every owner. There's multiple opportunities and protocols. And like we talked about, my goal and my role is to help you determine the efficiency of that, because I don't want to be doing things just to do them. I don't want you to spend money just to spend money. Let's have success outcome goals and marketability goals. I don't want it to be a singular event. I want it to be continued success.
So as you share this, Ashley, you talk about this from the perspective of being a veterinarian and specializing in this field, but let's not forget your other hat, the dairy farmer, dairy producer. And so I'm curious for you, can you share a story of how you have used some of your own strategies and advice, or maybe how you've come to learn some of these things through your own experiences within your own herd?
Yeah, so we do utilize various technologies, and the advice I'm giving is because they are things that we consider for our own operation. Is this animal valuable enough to be performing an IVF procedure on? If the answer is maybe no, then we consider a conventional flush for her. And maybe she hasn't reached a benchmark where we're comfortable even using her as a donor. We want her to calve in. We want to see how she develops. So all of these recommendations I'm giving are because they are things that affect our bottom line as a dairy farmer, separate from my veterinary embryo practice. I'm always treating your animals like I do my own. I'm considering your business like I consider my own business and how I operate to gain success and make sure I'm being fiscally responsible with having a true vision in mind on where I need to go with the different animals. So yes, we implement these in various ways, various lines of cattle, and it's truly because I care, because I understand. I've been in your shoes.
Yeah. So is there a specific line that you have done some work on within your own herd that you're really proud of?
There's a family that I grew up in my 4-H project days where it's a growing lesson, and your failures make you appreciate your successes so much greater. And so I had this winter calf that I was dead last at World Dairy Expo, my first time ever there, dead last in this class. And that really instilled a drive, like, how do I make this better? Where do we go next? And now we've been able, she as a cow is a 93-point cow, great production records, and we've been able to flush her, make daughters for 4-H kids, and see that success for them as well, and have them share in the experience and develop that passion for the dairy industry. So there are various success stories, I guess, that we have on our farm.
And as you talk about being able to breed that cow and have calves for other 4-H members, before you know it, in a few more years, you're going to have the little 4-H'er of your own who's 9 months now will be walking around with a little calf and a halter and those cute little white pants, right?
Yeah, the time is going to be here sooner than I think I'm ready for. But
well, let's maybe take a minute with where we're at in this conversation right now to reflect on the situation of coming back to the family farm. So as you mentioned, your little guy is the 7th generation. You're the 6th generation. And one of the biggest challenges in the dairy community is successfully transitioning family farms from one generation to the next. And it's in every state. It's in every size of operation. It's in every style of operation. This is one of our biggest challenges as an industry. And you and your family have worked through this generation after generation, including your own.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like?
Oh, yeah. It's the real of dairy farming, right? It's people from the outside looking in that aren't involved in agriculture think, isn't it great you get to work with your family every day? And everybody who does that in the dairy industry, they're like, yeah, it's great. And you have that satire associated with it. But I mean, we really are truly blessed and fortunate to be able to work with our family every day. But it comes with challenges, like you said, transitioning it and finding how to meld all those dynamics. It's emotional, it's frustrating, it's all of the entire spectrum of emotion. And learning to apologize to your family members is hard. Admitting you're wrong is hard all the time. But to be able to sit down and say, I'm really sorry. That's not what I meant or what I was trying to convey. In the heat of the moment, I said things I didn't mean. That's learning to apologize and say, I was wrong, but here's what I was trying to discuss. Can we have another conversation about that? It's a hard thing to do, but it's an important thing to do. Finding time, setting time aside to discuss important matters is hard to do, right? Because we want to do our chores, we want to get them done, but we're not going to have chores to do if we don't have a successful transition. And the farm faults because we didn't take the few minutes to have those hard conversations and make those decisions.
So from what you shared, you've been through what so many other families are dealing with on a daily basis. And it's not like it's ever really done. Did you always know you wanted to come back to the family farm?
I did. Yeah, I did. And that's part of what led me to vet school also, is because we have a smaller operation. Today's day and age, under 300 cows, we're small. But something we focus on is being efficient. So we want to make sure everything we're doing maximizes profitability. And so to be efficient, that meant I probably need an off-the-farm job or to go and do something that can bring added value back to our farm. And people do that in all sorts of ways, as nutritionists, as AI technicians, consultants. There's tons of ways people in other generations, other farms have supplemented or added value back to their own farm. And being a vet was where my interest in education brought me and my goals. So that was really how I thought it would be viable for me to come back to the farm. And so fortunately, I had a spouse who's willing to come back to the farm with me, and he is there day in, day out. And so I'm really fortunate that I have a loving husband who wants to participate in the day-to-day family throes that is dairy farming. So long story short is I did always know that I wanted to come back to the dairy farm. Figuring out how to do it and financially do it, realistically do it is another ball of wax than just having the interest. But it has to start with the interest.
So what did it take for those next steps?
Yeah. Yep. So when we decided to transition to the robots, we got a little creative on how my investments could roll into partnership. So there were some different grants available. So we utilized those contributions towards my gaining partnership into the farm. Small, we're talking like 3% of the farm, but it's a start. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and you want to be vested, right?
Yes. So having that stake in it was the first step in it all. As far as the actual transition piece, today's transition in dairy farming is such a huge financial implication compared to what it was 40 years ago. My dad would say, well, when I was your age, and we always joke, well, when you were our age, you could trade your family horse and go buy a car. And bartering was still a thing pretty near. But we look at how much the technology has added to the investment cost in dairy farming. Just the overhead to be involved in a farm now is astronomical compared to what it was in the 80s, 70s, 60s. Name any point in time. It's more expensive now than ever before. And unfortunately, commodity prices haven't been able to wholly support that for any one individual. And so some of the questions that it came down to was like, hey, mom and dad, do you mean it when you say you're doing this because you want the next generation to be involved? What does that look like? I don't have anything. I can't just mortgage my house. I don't have a house. I'm a broke recent grad from college who's going to go to vet school. And what does that look like? So figuring out and agreeing upon what areas financially are other generations willing to support in. What does that look like? If you truly want this to be for the next generation, how do we make that happen? How do we make accountability for all parties involved? what does accountability look like?
Mm-hmm.
And having those pieces in place. Fair is not always equal. We hear that all the time. So yeah, having all of those hard discussions is part of it.
Was there anyone in particular or any groups in particular that you brought in to help you through those conversations of both the ownership side and governance side?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest frustrations that a lot of young people have is you talk to your accountant and they say, well, you need to talk to a lawyer about how to implement those transition models. You talk to your lawyer and they say, well, we aren't best advised on what type of structure you should enroll in. And we're like, okay, we go back to the accountant. Well, they said that we need somebody to advise us on which type of structure we should have. And they're like, well, we can't really tell you because we're an accountant, so we can really only stay in this box. So finally, we were connected with a transition management company, and they gave us advice on compiling our goals. What is the best business model for your farm to exist in? And then from there, going to the accountant and saying, okay, now enroll us in this type of an entity. Here's the lawyer. Let's do the paperwork stuff. But figuring out who is responsible for what, because it seems like everyone passes off that responsibility. No, I'm not the party that decides that. I'm not the party that decides that. This person needs to give you advice on that. It makes your head spin.
Oh,
so
that's
really
complex.
Yes. Finding a team that is a consultant, truly transition planning consulting company, is where we found the answers we needed to compile those goals, help facilitate some of the conversations, and move forward from there.
So who did you work with?
So we worked with a gentleman named Myron Freeze, and he was from Iowa. I'm going to have to send you his exact details on the name of his management company. But yeah, he really helped guide us in what is the older generation's goals, what are the younger generation's goals, how do we meet in the middle, from tax implications, transition, all of that. What are everybody's current liabilities? How do we actually make it happen?
What I'm hearing from you, Ashley, is that it was a frustrating part of the early part of this process was just figuring out how to navigate around what needed to be done and who were the right people. Mm-hmm. And it really took working with this consulting group to sit down and just lay that all out so that you knew what you wanted goals-wise, accountability-wise, and structure-wise, and then take that to the other parties, the accountant, the lawyer, etc. And that's where it started for you.
That is.
Yeah. Yes. But how frustrating it is to the time it takes to get to that point. And so absolutely. I do hope that there might be someone that gets to hear what you shared, Ashley, and that it helps them to say, okay, this is where we need to start versus the time spent chasing around those conversations. Mm-hmm. Because once someone is ready, you got to capitalize on readiness because it takes a while in a lot of cases to get generations all on board to do something. Mm-hmm. And the biggest challenge at that point is when you can't.
Yes. It's so much easier to have these conversations and make plans when you're still able to, not because you have to. So I think making sure your legacy is passed on the way you want it to means that you need to have those conversations now. And one of the goals that we just laid it out on the line is I said, okay, do you want me to write you a check for your net worth, or do you want me to be able to farm with you? And that was heavy. Like that sunk in for my dad. I was like, you're worth this much on paper, and if you need to see it on a check, let me know, and we will have to figure out whether or not we can be involved. And I think that gave him pause to say, whoa, farming looks so much different now. Is my goal to transition this as a net worth or transition this as a generational farm?
I'm so grateful that you shared this part of the conversation too, because I think it will hit home for some people that are in these stages, but also they're able to see what's possible when you have the hard conversations, when you have the right counsel to be there with you through it. And how many years past that initial start at this point?
Yeah, we are probably, 6, 7, 8 years into it now, and it started too with setting that time aside. I mentioned that earlier on, but we ran it like business meetings. It was 4 of us, my mom, my dad, my husband, and myself, but we sat in the living room every Sunday on a weekly basis. We took meeting minutes, we assigned tasks to specific people and said, what are our goals for the summer? Who is in charge of following up with this implement dealer? Who is in charge of this specifically? And the next week, did you get this done? Well, no, I didn't call so-and-so. Okay, well, put it in the minutes that, so-and-so didn't call yet. They need to do that this week yet. But having it written down on paper for you to reference back and say, oh, I don't remember. Who did we say was going to call this person? Well, shoot, now we don't remember anymore. But having that as a layer of accountability was helpful for our family in particular. But having that routine set time to check in was really important. It's now subsided to, we've backed it off to every couple of weeks, and then we backed it off to once a month. But it gave us space, a time to specifically talk about, these are the emotional things that we need to set aside, because in general, we all have the same goal of achieving XYZ, and let's make this black and white as far as these are the tasks, not the emotions tied to the tasks.
Wow. So as you state this now, this is the way that you do things now. Was it like this as a kid growing up? Did you have meetings like this?
Well, that's what we always joked about too, is the meetings like that used to be because you would finish chores and then everyone would go in and have breakfast together, and you'd sit and you would talk for an hour and you'd have those in passing conversations. Well, now in operations, how often is it that you're all in the same space for the same amount of time versus in passing, hey, I'm going to go mix feed, which is however far off this direction. I'm going to go breed some cows. Well, you might be in a pen in a totally different direction. So everyone is just moving at a faster pace and over a literally larger physical space. And so you didn't have those challenges when you were milking 40 cows in a tie stall barn, sitting right next to the person and having a conversation across the feed alley. So I think a lot of those conversations used to happen in the barn or in passing or around the breakfast, dinner table, whatever the case may be, versus now you need to set that time aside because everyone's jobs tend to be more compartmentalized than they used to be.
And that's worked well for you and your family and your family farming business.
And it started out, like I said, on a weekly meeting, but now in time, as we've established and recognized how people communicate with each other, ways we need to have conversations, they happen more naturally now. They just become more second nature. Starting group text messages, all just little things that have helped us communicate better in real time so that we don't have to have several hour-long meetings to hash certain things out. We can do those things more in real time.
Ashley, thank you so much for sharing this wealth of information. You brought so much value today from your personal experience on the farm and farming with your family, this transition topic, as well as the topic of advanced reproduction and making the most of those technologies on our dairies. Just so thankful that you had some time here at Holstein Convention to sit down and to share these things with us today. And as we wrap up our time together, I have 5 questions that I'm going to challenge you with. These are my favorite questions to ask. I call them the up level 5, and this is how we wrap up a lot of our episodes. And so question number 1 that I have for you, Ashley, is what does success look like to you?
Success to me is how much is answering to yourself? How much is enough? And what is enough? What fills your cup? So success isn't necessarily financial success alone. It isn't any one particular thing. Success is that we're content, that we are happy, and we're proud of what we do and stand behind each and every day.
So for you? What does that look like?
Yeah, right now it's the process of us adding to my embryo business. So meeting those benchmarks that we set for ourselves. So right now our next successful goal is that we are building an office and hopefully a donor housing facility in time with that. And so success is obtainable goals, reaching obtainable goals. We can all say that we want to live in a huge house on the lake with brand new barn and everything's in state-of-the-art facilities. But success to me looks like setting an attainable goal, reaching that goal, setting the next one, and continuing forward.
Has becoming a mom changed any of your way of viewing and measuring success?
Yeah, I would say it, everyone says this. It makes you slow down and stop to appreciate the little moments. So I tell myself there might not ever be this same 2 hours in time where I get to spend with him. So right now, before he goes to bed, I don't do work right now. I'm turning it off. I am mom. When he's sleeping again, I can do more work stuff again. So being present, I think, is something that we all need to make sure we do in any of the ventures that we're involving ourselves in. Being present so that we can enjoy when we meet those successes.
Okay, so question number 2. In 3 words, how do you want to show up each day?
Smiling, solving, and passionate. Showing up with a smile is something that resonates with me because I was at a farm and the one gentleman said, when you show up here every day, you always smile. And I said, yeah, because it's the easiest thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Solving, I think being part of a solution is really important because I'm not here to create more problems. We all have enough problems. We all need help to be successful, and being part of that solution and solving problems is somewhere I want to be. And what was the last one that I said? Passion. Wanting to be there, I think, is the other part of it. Being on maternity leave, I was really proud of myself for taking a maternity leave. But I will tell you, I am truly passionate about my job too, because man, was I excited to get back as well and see the people that I had been away from and share in their success. So those would be the 3.
I love that. Okay, question number 3. Who are the thought leaders that you follow? This could be anyone you would read, anyone you admire, someone you seek out for advice. Take it any way you'd like.
Yeah. So one that I think is a fun one, Dolly Parton said, find out who you are and do it on purpose. So I think this rings true for Holstein breeders, for anybody in their life. Find what you want to do. Don't try to be like somebody else. Find what you're good at and do it on purpose.
Love that.
I think the other people that I follow and resonate is really my family. My parents are a wealth of knowledge. I mean, like I said, we chuckle about working with family every day and the struggles that brings. But on the flip side, I mean, they've forgotten more about dairy farming than I even know at this point. So having them teach me all these different things about business and finance sense, about communicating with other people, and there's so many, and even my in-laws, I've learned so much from them and their roles in leadership in life. And so I'm really, really fortunate that they are able to guide me, understand what I'm doing, respect and appreciate the work that I'm in. And my husband too. We chuckle. Do we compliment each other, or have we known each other so long that we just can seamlessly fill in for each other on what our weaknesses and strengths are? So those are the things that I really try to hang on to in my mind, and lessons, I guess, that I've learned. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my predecessor that I bought my practice from is David Duxbury. And one of the things that he instilled in me when I bought the practice, he didn't want to go into partnership. He said, no, if you're the sole owner, then you can make the decisions, and I'm here to guide you in any way. And his advice and the way he acted every day was, how can I help you finish your day? It was never, you need to help me so that I can get going. How can I help you? What do you need? So I think that's a really important mantra and an important lesson that I try to implement in other ways. How can I help you?
Oh, I love that. The fourth question I have for you are, what are the words you live by? You shared Dolly Parton's words, which are spot on.
Yeah.
Any other ones you wanted to add to that list?
Man, I don't have a ton of them outside of the Dolly Parton one. Why not? I sell Mary Kay makeup too. But Mary
The
Kay
great Mary
Ash,
Kay Ash. Yes.
she coined the phrase of God first, family second, work third.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important. When you asked if life's changed for me at all with having a little one, we really need to be grateful for our faith. It gets us through some really hard, trying times. Our family, irreplaceable, 100%. And work third. Like, there will always be work. No matter what, there will always be laundry to do, dishes, any of it. But spending time with your family is irreplaceable moments. And so putting those things in that order, I think, is really important.
That's a beautiful quote to share. Thank you for that. And last question I have for you. What's your next up level?
My next up level is really expanding on my embryo business. I mentioned that we're building a space. Really hoping to branch out from that, reach out, and hopefully make it so that I can do more from home, watch the little guy grow up more. My next up level is focusing on that business and how can I make it something that Mason wants to be a part of and keep a seventh generation involved, passionate, and happy.
I love that. And Ashley, for someone who might be listening that would like to learn more about your practice, your growing practice, your evolving practice, and how they might be able to reach out to you for services that you offer, where could they find more information?
Yeah, so we are on Facebook, Midwest Embryo Transfer Service. That is also our website, MidwestEmbryoTransferService.com. We are on socials. Otherwise, people can find our phone number there too and reach out.
Perfect.
They can snag me anytime. I'm happy to help them if I can.
Excellent. So, anything else you'd like to add in our time together today?
Teamwork makes the dream work. It's really true. Finding what you are good at to help serve others. The gifts we're given from God to help instill that into others around us. We aren't here for ourselves alone. So I think being part of the solution, being part of the bigger picture so that we can all be successful is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I hope I've helped bring that to other listeners on your podcast.
Oh, you sure have. And I'm, again, so thankful that we got time to sit down in person here in St. Louis today and get to learn about you, but more importantly, learn about the way in which you go about the work that you do, whether it's the embryo work, whether it's the farm work, or the new role you have of being mom, but that focus that you've emphasized on faith, on family, and on carrying out your passion, your purpose through work in that order. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Ashley Swenson.
Thank you.
You just heard from Dr. Ashley Swenson here on the Up Level Dairy Podcast. To learn more about Midwest Embryo Services, please check the link in our show notes. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a minute to rate or review it on your favorite listening platform. And I'm Peggy Coffeen. Until next time, keep on growing, keep on learning, and up-leveling your dairy.